This is your weekend. Mark Rogers TV looking at the best week of the season. That's, in my opinion, it's rivalry week. We bring in Peter Loshak of Sportsbook Review to help us break it down. Peter, thanks so much for joining us. Let's start on Friday. In the Big Ten, it's Iowa, it's Nebraska. The game's in Lincoln. Of course, Iowa's had a much better season, but I think if you look at the talent, it's a pretty close matchup. And the Hawkeyes right now, just about a 2.5 point favorite.
Yeah, I mean, Iowa is a great road team in general to bet on. They're 13-3 against the spread in their last 16 road games, and Nebraska, it's really just a judgment call on whether they're going to underachieve again or put it together. Some people have a good read on it. I feel like I don't really, and with the total, could easily see an under or an over. Both teams obviously have been scoring a lot recently, but my gut tells me that, all the stats I've seen say that the over is a good bet. My gut is that the under, that'll be lower scoring than people are expecting. I wouldn't argue against anyone who wanted to bet either way on this game, but for me, it's going to be a pass.
The giant has fallen in the Big Ten. Ohio State goes down to Michigan State in Columbus as a double-digit favorite. The Buckeyes have some issues, it appears. They go to Ann Arbor to take on Michigan. These two teams are not going to know at the time of kickoff whether they can advance to the Big Ten championship game, because that has yet to be decided with Michigan State hosting Penn State. But it's considered possibly the biggest rivalry in sports. You got Ohio State going to Michigan as a 2-point underdog. Maybe the first time, I believe, in 3 years in the regular season that Ohio State's been an underdog.
Right, and that's actually kind of important when it comes to the line. I'm actually seeing Pick'em or +1, but my initial thoughts on this game were that Ohio State, obviously they have a ton of talent, but that they're just not putting it together. At least on the field in college. Maybe those players will go on to be great NFL players. My initial sense was that I was leaning Michigan. I think that their defenses are even if anything, you could make an argument that Michigan statistically has been better this year. They're very similar, but Michigan's played tougher opponents. And offensively, Michigan's quarterback, who was expected to be kind of like a more of game manager this year, has actually been great recently. But I previewed this game with a guy named Al McMorty from BigAl.com, professional handicapper for a long time, guy who really knows his stuff. And he likes Ohio State here. His main reasons are that he cited a couple of interesting things. Defending national champions off of their first loss tend to be a great bet in the next game, the year after they won the national championship, something like 20-4 if they're playing a team that's off a win. And then he also pointed to Urban Meyer teams getting points. Urban Meyer has also been a great bet against the spread as a small underdog. So those two factors are very interesting, and he thinks Ohio State is a good bet here, so I'm not going to question that. It's an interesting game. My initial lean was Michigan, but now I'm buying it and leaning towards Ohio State just because of what Al McMorty told me.
Yeah, should be a good one. So elsewhere, Michigan State hosts Penn State. The Spartans coming off that mammoth win in Columbus. They hold the Big Ten championship in their hands. They control destiny. Penn State looks to be spoiler here at 7-4.
Yeah, last time I checked, there's no line on this game. I'm expecting that it's going to be about 11 or 12 for Michigan State. They've covered 4 out of their last 5. Penn State has lost 4 out of their 5 last 5 ATS, and Penn State feels like the kind of team that when they're at home against weaker teams, they get impressive ATS covers. They got a big home win against Illinois, of course, but I just don't think that they can really hang with the top teams, especially on the road. They're 0-4 against the spread this year on the road, and they just have a lot of problems. They're banged up, and I'm not seeing that Penn State can really hang with Michigan State. So I haven't seen a line, but at 11 or 12, I'd definitely be leaning Michigan State here.
North Carolina with an ACC championship game berth locked up, but the Tar Heels at number 14, and with just the one loss in week 1, still making a bid for the college football playoff. They go on the road to face arch rival North Carolina State.
Yeah, this is a tricky one because from a certain perspective, it looks like a down spot, despite it being a rivalry game, a down spot for North Carolina. Obviously, for the Virginia Tech game last week was took a lot out of them. It was a huge game, and then of course they have Clemson coming up. It is though a big bounce back, a big revenge spot for North Carolina. We know that NC State went into North Carolina and blew them out last year, and that's definitely something that the North Carolina players are aware of and talking about. Of course, they're doing the requisite playing it down, but it's clearly something that's on their mind. And the line has been moving. I think I saw 5.5 at the last jump. At +7, I would have liked NC State. At 5.5, I'm not exactly sure. I think North Carolina does have the talent edge here, and they're not going to go in and get a loss. And I think I'd be leading North Carolina, despite the fact that they came off a really tough game and that they have Clemson coming up.
Peter, rarely do we see an SEC team that's got a better record and is playing at home is the underdog. You factor in all those three things, and you've got the Florida State situation with the Gators at home, not playing well in recent weeks, but still only have the one loss, taking on arch nemesis Florida State, the Seminoles, with 2 losses, but they're about a 2.5-point pick at this point.
Yeah. Florida State's covered 4 in a row, and Florida, you mentioned it, just 1 loss in the year, not really playing well. And against the spread, just 2-3 in their last 5. A lot of problems with Florida that I'm seeing. Their offensive line shaky, and Treon Harris, when he's not getting pressured, I'm not sure I trust him. And when he's getting pressured, just missing open receivers. Florida's defense obviously is awesome, but my sense is that I like Florida State here getting the points. And with such a low total, obviously it's probably going to be a big defensive battle. You're usually not supposed to tease college football teams, but Florida State on a teaser might be a great bet. But I like them just to win the game outright, and definitely like them getting a couple of points on the spread.
Okay, most consider Alabama to be the best team in the country, especially with Ohio State going down. That's the way Vegas plays it right now. Alabama does have to beat Auburn to get to the SEC championship game. If other things fall into place, they will take on Florida there. But first, Bama's got to go on the Plains, take on Auburn as about a couple touchdown favorite.
Yeah, and it opened at about 13. Now it's creeping up to 14, and Alabama is going to be a huge public play. And, I'm guessing that it'll close, somewhere around 16.5. There will very likely be big bets on Alabama from the public, from non-sharp accounts. So I would definitely say that if you like Alabama, take them now at 14, because I'm guessing it's going to be a big public play that's going to go higher. And me personally, I mean, Alabama has not been good against the spread when they visited Jordan-Hare Stadium. They're only 1-4 against the spread the last 5 times they've been there. So, in a rivalry game, a lot of times when you see a team that appears to be outmatched out of nowhere, they kind of, play way better than expected. We see that in all kinds of like West Virginia, Marshall, all those kinds of rivalry games. So, if Auburn covers, it wouldn't be a shock to me, but I'm certainly not going to be betting them. I see this as Alabama or nothing.
Now, should there be a monumental upset on the Plains and Auburn upsets Alabama, then you've got the Ole Miss Mississippi State winner in play if it's the Rebels with the head-to-head matchup going their way against Alabama. So it's the Egg Bowl. The incentive should be there regardless, but if Alabama loses, Ole Miss could win the West. We've got Mississippi State hosting Ole Miss, that one close to pick 'em.
Yeah, and it's another tricky one because the home team in this matchup in the Egg Bowl usually wins. I forgot what the exact record is, but the home team has won 9 out of the last 10 or something like that, and covered 8 out of the last 10. The problem is that the scheduling spot, to my eye, I've kind of seen this a lot of times over the years. The scheduling spot is tough for Mississippi State. Their last 2 weeks have been a lot more draining than Mississippi. Mississippi had a bye week, and then they had a margin win at home against LSU. That was a tough game, but didn't take necessarily a lot out of them. Whereas Mississippi State, had the big loss to Alabama, and then came back the next week and got a high-scoring, close win against Arkansas, tough in the trenches. So the scheduling spot has me definitely favoring Mississippi. Historically, the home team the Egg Bowl favors the home team, especially when the home team has a great quarterback like Mississippi State has. I'd be leaning Mississippi here, but I'm not sure I'm going to be betting it.
Oklahoma could win the Big 12 outright with a date at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State would need some help. Regardless, the winner of this game throws their hat in the ring with one loss, an 11-1 record for the college football playoff. Sooners, kind of a darling of the college football playoff committee at this point, go to Oklahoma State for Bedlam.
Yeah, big question on this one is the condition of Baker Mayfield. Last I saw, he's questionable. You know, he had a concussion, and a lot of times when especially college kids, when they get concussions and then come back too soon, they might be medically cleared to play, but it still affects them in one way or another. You know, it's tough to you're just getting used to those kinds of big hits. And at this line, it opened a lot lower. I'm seeing 6.5 right now. I would take Oklahoma State here at 6.5. Oklahoma's offense, with Trevor Knight kind of stalled out, and if Mayfield's in and having some issues, he might stall out there. Oklahoma State has covered 3 out of the last 4 against Oklahoma, and that's somewhat important here, I think. But the bigger issue is just Oklahoma's offense with Knight at quarterback, or with Mayfield having issues and giving all these points. I definitely lean Oklahoma State at 6.5.
And Peter, talking about quarterback issues, we've got more in the Big 12 with Baylor going to TCU. Both teams down their big star player, and for Baylor, it's also the second stringer in Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah, this game has no line as of right now. Baylor usually, historically, TCU covers, right? TCU has covered 7 out of the last 8 games against Baylor. But Baylor's backup quarterback's looking a lot better than TCU's quarterbacks at the moment. I'm not sure. I have no idea what the line's going to be. I haven't heard anything on it when it comes out. But in general, I would Baylor looks better on paper, but I'm going to revisit this game when the line comes out and when the information on who's playing and in what condition is a lot better known. I mean, TCU, they came close in the last game, but they got outgained by a lot of yards. They got outrushed by like more than 100 yards, and that's the first time that that's happened to them this year. And those are ominous signs. I'd be leaning Baylor, but we'll see what the line is when it comes out.
Who would have thought a few weeks ago that Utah would be completely out of play in the Pac-12 South Division, and it's all down to the battle for LA with USC and UCLA. The records aren't that pretty at 8-3 and 7-4, but the winner will move on to the Pac-12 championship game.
Yeah, this is just a judgment call on who's going to execute better. Both teams have, you might give the edge to USC because some people are saying that, the fact that he's a senior quarterback against a freshman quarterback makes a big difference. I'm not 100% sold on that. I think it's going to be a close game. The Pac-12 is so unpredictable this year. A blowout by either team would not be a shock. USC in general tends to do well after they fire their coaches down the stretch. But I guess I'd lean UCLA here at 3.5, but I'm going to wait to see what the line movement is. And there might be late sharp action on this game. That'll be very telling. So I'm definitely just waiting and watching, and I'm going to see what the line movement is and listen to reports. And if there is sharp action that I hear coming in, definitely going to tail it.
And finally, Peter, we've got a game that appeared to be a play-in game a couple weeks ago, and now it appears to be a play-in game for Notre Dame, unless some other things fall in other conferences where Notre Dame not impressing the College Football Playoff Committee in recent weeks, down to number 6. They go out to Stanford, difficult challenge against the Cardinal.
Yeah, this line has moved a lot. It opened with Notre Dame as a small favorite. Now it's all the way to Stanford, -3.5. Notre Dame is very banged up. They've been kind of banged up all year, and it's affected them in certain ways, not as much as it could have affected them. But now I think that it's really going to hit them hard. And going on the road against Stanford, especially Stanford, having lost to Oregon 2 weeks ago, is not a spot where you want to be vulnerable. I like Stanford on the opening line, and I'd still like them here at -3.5. I'd bet them at -3.5 for sure.
Wow. Okay. Peter Loshak joining us from Sportsbook Review to break down a big rivalry week in college football. Peter, we always appreciate the insight and the information.
My pleasure.